Now, if I may, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Michelle Swanson is the Manager of Community Relations for Xcel Energy. She will be sharing the Xcel Energy story on how they are building the future of energy by leading the clean energy transition, enhancing their customers' experience, keeping bills low, and giving back to our communities. If you want to know any more, read your rib. This is what's in there. Okay. Michelle, would you like to come up? Thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for having me here today. I'm excited to share our clean energy transition story and talk a bit about our impact in the state, our impact in Bloomington, and the various partnerships we have with the city. So I want to start off by just giving you a little bit of basics about Xcel Energy. We're an investor-owned utility. We serve both electric and gas. We serve into 8 states. Our corporate headquarters is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we're well known for a number of different things in our industry. I'll be focusing today on our carbon emission reductions works. Bloomington is the 3rd largest city that we serve in the state of Minnesota. Minneapolis is our largest, followed by St. Paul, and then Bloomington is the 3rd largest that Xcel serves. And we serve approximately 45,000 electric customers in the city of Bloomington. We're not the gas provider. That is CenterPoint Energy for Bloomington. So we have 3 strategic priorities which pretty much drive everything that we do. First of all, we want to lead the clean energy transition, and I'm going to talk in more detail about that in the upcoming slides. But I'll touch bases on the other priorities that we have are enhancing the customer experience. We want to make it easy for our customers to do business with us. We want to create programs and services that are going to help our customers manage their bills, reduce their energy costs, etc. We have a robust set of energy efficiency programs that we offer residential and business customers. We have renewable options for customers who are interested in that. And we want to do all of this while keeping bills low. Oops, I got to back up. All right, so I want to lay the groundwork now for my next slides, because now are the slides where I'm going to talk about our clean energy transition. In 2018, we were the first utility in the nation to commit to reducing our carbon emissions. And our commitment was that we would reduce our carbon emissions by 80% from 2005 levels by 2030. So that was kind of a stake in the ground. That was our commitment. We're going to do that. And then we had a vision of being 100% carbon-free by 2050. And I'll talk a little bit later about why we made a commitment for 2030, but we didn't make that same level of commitment for 2050. So how are we doing in our commitment? So we're over halfway to our goal of reducing carbon emissions by 80% by 2030. Right now, we reduce carbon emissions by 58%. And the 87% is actually, we think that we might even be able to reduce carbon emissions more than 80% because of the portfolio of resources that we're expecting to bring online. So we think it's very possible that we could exceed our goal for 2030, and that goal was set in 2018. So how would we do this? There's really 4 different strategies that we have to reduce carbon emissions. First of all, we're closing all our coal plants. All our coal plants will be closed by 2030. Secondly, we're adding a tremendous amount of renewables, primarily wind and solar. Our third strategy is, I don't know if you know, but we have 2 locations for nuclear plants and 3 units. So we have 1 unit in Monticello, and we have 2 units near Red Wing, Minnesota. And nuclear power is carbon-free, and it's also a base load plant. And so it is a critical resource for us to maintain in order for us to achieve our carbon-free goals. And so we plan on continuing to evaluate relicensure so we can operate our nuclear plants longer, but of course, safely. And finally, we're going to continue to use natural gas as a transition fuel. We have a lot of renewables on our system, wind and solar. And probably you've all experienced a time where it's super sunny out, and all of a sudden cloud cover comes, and all of a sudden it's not sunny. And that can be the difference of a tremendous amount of our generation being powered by solar, and then all of a sudden solar just drops almost to zero. And we have to be able to have dispatchable resources like natural gas plants that are going to infill what we lost in terms of that lost solar or perhaps that lost wind. So it's really important that we continue to use natural gas as an interim fuel while we see how technology develops, to be able to have technologies that are going to be able to fill that need other than natural gas that are carbon-free. So if you're an Xcel Energy electric customer, every kilowatt hour that you use is 64% carbon-free. And you can see the mix of the carbon-free resources in the dark blue on this chart. So I alluded earlier to tell you kind of why we felt comfortable by actually committing to an 80% reduction or greater by 2030 from 2005 levels, as compared to that 2050 vision that we had. Well, we've been investing in renewables for quite a few years. We've been a leader in that industry, in particular wind industry. And in 2018, when we made that commitment, we recognized that the technologies that you need to get to 80% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030 were already in existence. We were already using some of those technologies. These technologies are proven, they're at utility scale, they're affordable, and they're reliable, because what we know that we can't sacrifice affordability or reliability to our customers as we go in search of making our carbon reduction emissions. Now that's very different. In 2050, we said that we had a vision of being carbon-free by 2050. We know that we can get to the 80% level by 2030 with existing technology. However, it's going to require a leap in technology in order for us to get to 100% carbon-free. Because the technologies to get that last 20% of our vision, there aren't technologies out there right now that are at utility scale, that are affordable, or that are reliable. So we're counting on technology to develop. And you might say, oh, geez, that's a big leap to have technology to develop. But just look in terms of the technology that we've seen develop for all of us in the last 10 years, 20 years. And it used to be that people didn't think solar was very economic, and now Xcel Energy is using a great deal of solar because technology developed, prices dropped, and it's become very cost effective for us to be able to put solar on our system. So that's what we're counting on, is leaps in technology, and probably at some point it might be a combination of these technologies that will give us that 24/7 carbon-free resource in order to fill that last 20%. So now I want to move on to a little bit in terms of Xcel Energy and its impact to the state of Minnesota and to local communities, including Bloomington. So here's just a couple of statistics in terms of suppliers that we utilize, et cetera, the spend that we have. I want to comment on two different things. The jobs at Xcel Energy, I'm proud to say that 10% of our workforce is from veterans. We consider that a priority. We want them in our workforce. We find them very valuable, and we're really proud of having 10% of our workforce be veterans. I also want to draw your attention to the property tax statistic. We're the largest property tax payer in the state of Minnesota, and have been for years, and probably will be for years. Just as an FYI, we pay the city of Bloomington about $326,000 or so in property taxes every year. We also impact the state and our communities in other ways, for example, through volunteerism. So these are some stats in terms of the volunteer efforts that we've had in the state of Minnesota. We have a great volunteer program. We have a lot of ways that our employees can participate in volunteer programs, including a number of nonprofits here in Bloomington. We also do a lot of investing with our nonprofits and with workforce, for example. And so, again, we have financial mechanisms in place to help sponsor a number of different organizations. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that first item under the second bullet of focus area grants. As Jane mentioned, we have a foundation that provides grants to nonprofits. And there's three areas that we invest in: environmental sustainability, community vitality, and environmental stewardship. And I'm pleased to say that There are 7 organizations that we fund here in the city of Bloomington, and in fact, most of these organizations, I think all of them, were notified last week that they were recipients of a foundation area grant from us. Several of these organizations have received grants like for multiple years. Others are new. For example, VEEP is a new nonprofit that's going to get its first foundation grant. So in total, these total about $80,000 in grants. Grants range anywhere from $7,500 to typically $15,000 with this group of nonprofits. So now I want to talk about some other partnerships we have. Our pollinator plantings. Many of you may be aware that there's a large pollinator planting along Park Avenue in Bloomington. That's our transmission corridor, and what we've done is we've worked with the city of Bloomington and other nonprofits to essentially transition basically what was turf, just plain grass in that corridor, and have converted it to pollinator plantings. We've got 19 acres planted in this corridor, which is an incredible amount. And in fact, this fall, we're going to be working with the city of Bloomington, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Xcel Energy. Partnering, we're going to be doing an additional 4 acres of pollinator planting, basically extending this corridor. So we're pretty excited about that. And that was a result of partnering with City of Bloomington, Fish and Wildlife. We submitted a grant application to Hennepin County for one of their Good Steward grants. So it's really a great example about how we partner with our cities and communities. Another partnership, which you may or may not be familiar with, a few years ago, the City of Bloomington approached us about the concept about having a mural placed on our substation walls at our substation, East Bloomington substation, at American Boulevard and 30th Avenue. We hadn't really done that before in the state of Minnesota, but after looking at it and walking through kind of how that would work, we came to an agreement with the city of Bloomington. And the city of Bloomington essentially put out kind of like almost an RFP for artists to put their work on our walls. And this represents all the artists who had a part of that mural, because every artist had some portion of it. Some of the artists coordinated, but others had very separate murals that they were going to place. And it's really quite beautiful. And I've just got a couple of pictures if you haven't been out there to see how well this turned out. I mean, this used to be a gray cement wall, and now it is a beautiful work of art. And I would really encourage you, if you haven't gone out to there, I mean, it's gorgeous. And it's one of the longest murals in the state of Minnesota. It's approximately 752 foot long, because it's two pretty long walls of our substation. So we're really pleased about this. The city put on a great community event, which was well attended, and it was great. So there's kind of a last view of the walls. And then a new partnership that is underway is, in the past, the city of Bloomington, and quite frankly, other cities have approached us to say, can we wrap or paint those ugly green boxes of yours? And Xcel Energy, our answer traditionally had been no, because that's just not what we do. We haven't done that. You know, we can recognize an ugly green box from far away, you know, when our crews have to respond to outages and things like that, and we just had never done it. But a couple of years ago, we decided to put together a test pilot. Stillwater and Bloomington are in that test pilot. And so what you should expect to see is probably this summer or this fall, the city of Bloomington will be in the process. That checked box is one of the green boxes that they're going to be painting. But they are getting artists together, and they're going to be painting approximately 6 to 8 of our pieces of infrastructure over the summer and fall. And assuming the test pilot goes well, and it's gone well with the city of Stillwater, which was the other city that we had the pilot with, you can expect to see this program hopefully roll out maybe to other communities. And certainly I would hope that the cities that were in the pilot to begin with are going to be able to do more boxes than just the 6 or 8. I have to acknowledge, I think the city of Bloomington has an incredible creative placemaking program. I mean, the art that they have commissioned all over the city is just incredible. And so if you haven't taken advantage of that, I know they have a great website in terms of outlining all the beautiful works of art that they've placed all through the city. But it's pretty incredible. So we were happy to partner with them and excited to see what the boxes look like by the end of this year.
Excuse me, I like to interrupt. One of our members here over here, Diane Kirby, was integral with creative placemaking back in the day, right?
Yeah, not, but Alejandro Palenka.
Yeah, that's who we work with, yeah.
Is fantastic.
Yep.
She's done a fantastic job with this program.
Larry Lee was too.
Yeah, Larry was too.
That's right, that's right. And that ends my presentation.
Well, we have time for questions, and if I may, I'll start. I have a friend, I like to call him a nuclear engineer friend. He worked in a nuclear plant, he was an engineer, I don't know what he did. But he says there's all kinds of studies out there that shows the most efficient type of power, no matter what, is wind power nowadays. Does that sound correct or feasible, or know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, we found it to be economical. That's why we're adding large wind farms onto our portfolio of resources. I mean, when you think about it, you have the expense of the turbine itself and the installation, but the cost of the fuel is free. So it has become a very, very economic resource for us. Of course, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so you want to diversify. But, you know, we have a very good wind regime in southwestern Minnesota with the Buffalo Ridge. And so all kinds of utilities are taking advantage of that, including Buffalo Ridge that runs into Iowa and South Dakota as well. So it's been a very economic resource for us.
One of your slides showed that one source is hydrogen.
Yes.
Could you explain what that's all about?
Sure. We are involved in a project called the Hydrogen Hub in the Midwest, but we're also involved with generating hydrogen from renewable resources, for example, and then you can take that hydrogen and you can burn it actually in certain natural gas turbines. So the idea is if you can generate hydrogen in a renewable capacity or in a carbon-free capacity, and you store that, and then you can burn that actually in one of our gas turbines, that is getting you more reductions in carbon emissions. So I can go into more detail later afterwards with you in terms of the Hydrogen Hub, because that's a DOE effort that we're involved in with DOE and a number of other utilities in terms of exploring more options in hydrogen.
Generating hydrogen to be used to burn.
Right, and we're trying to generate it from renewable or carbon-free. So if you can generate hydrogen through nuclear, that's carbon-free. Or if you can generate hydrogen through other means that are renewable, that is carbon-free too. And then you take that and you utilize it in, like I said, a gas turbine, for example.
Maybe the same slide that Don was referring to, I noticed besides what was included, in terms of carbon abatement, you did not include any kind of technological potential for transmission line loss of reduction or for battery storage development, but do you see those as also possible ways that will get you towards your bucket list goal?
Right, absolutely. Battery storage for sure. There's a lot of work going on in that, and we're putting in a pilot project up near our Sherco plant that actually, it's called the FORM project, and you can Google that, and it, you know, I'm not a technical person, but it has to do with the idea of it somehow creating energy that you can store by having like iron rust. And that seems kind of far out, but there's a lot of work going on in battery storage right now, so I fully expect that we'll be involved in that in the future. And then your question about transmission, I mean, I was demonstrating this kind of from the supply side, but obviously there are things we can do with distribution systems, transmission systems that can continue to make those systems more efficient and lessen line losses, which all contributes to reduced carbon emissions. Yeah.
What is the controversy about tritium?
The controversy about tritium. Well, so that's an issue that's up at our Monticello plant. There was a leak of tritium detected, I think, almost 2 years ago, underneath the plant. We've been in the process of capturing that tritium. It does not pose a threat right now to the river, but there's a lot of concern. Tritium is naturally occurring, but there are a lot of people concerned that tritium associated with the nuclear power plant is kind of a serious threat. And what I would offer to you is, because I'm not an expert on the issue of tritium, we have an entire landing page on the Xcel Energy website that can go into more detail, that can outline in terms of how we're in compliance with all standards, et cetera. We're trying to be very transparent about the whole tritium issue, but it's really sensitive, especially for the folks, especially that kind of live up in that area. So I don't want to do it a disservice and provide wrong information, so I would just encourage you to go to that landing page.
Well, one of the things that I guess I find frustrating just as a customer, even though one point the Queen administration had a pretty significant role in rate cases and stuff like that, but is that it seems to me that Congress basically made a final decision with advisory committee help on Yucca Mountain as a permanent storage facility in Nevada about 25 years ago, and we had Harry Reid not be the Senate majority or minority leader for the last 5 years. But now that it's 25 years past, isn't it about time that you guys could stop having to go and get permission for added temporary storage facilities, and we finally get a national solution that Congress presumably approved, and Harry Reid kept saying, well, we got to have more process?
Well, we certainly have a federal affairs area that I'm sure continues to look at that. I don't know how much we're pushing that, quite frankly, right now. It's a huge controversial issue, and even with Harry Reid out of there, it's still a very controversial issue. So I think we're as frustrated as anyone in terms of how long we've had to hold this waste and the amount of money we've had to spend in order to keep that cask storage there, et cetera. So it's certainly on the radar screen of our federal affairs area, but with all the things that are going on in the administration right now, I don't know if that's the top thing that we're looking at right now.
With a lot of the storms and wind and causes a lot of power outage every once in a while. Is there any movement that Xcel is doing to try to get more and more stuff underground?
Right. I know that is a common concern for sure about outages, especially because trees are our number one cause of outages, right? And with overhead lines, that's when it's going to happen. It's very expensive to move overhead lines underground. It's very expensive. We are looking at places for targeted undergrounding, like if there are areas of our system that we think would extremely benefit from undergrounding. We're taking a look at that and are doing some targeted undergrounding where we would pay for that. But for right now, our kind of remedy to that is making sure that we're continuing to clear our transmission and distribution lines so we don't have trees too close to those power lines. But admittedly, we can trim a corridor and we have certain clearances that we have to meet. But if you get a big enough storm, there could be a tree outside the corridor that could just it looks totally healthy, but it's actually failed, and it could uproot and go over our power lines. So we're trying, through tree trimming and things like that, trying to minimize those types of outages. But it is our number one cause of outages.
One of the big issues is AI and the need for generating more power. Of course, that's something that you should put the systems in. I mean, I think all of us as individual ratepayers want to make sure that when you put these expensive things in, that they're really paying for themselves, as opposed to making the general ratepayer pay for them.
Right. I mean, we're seeing a huge demand for data centers. Probably a lot of them won't ever happen, but there's a lot of inquiries going on in the state of Minnesota in terms of being able to locate data centers here. We've certainly been before the commission and have answered that question in terms of there are certain expectations or requirements that these data centers, if they come online, that they're gonna have to pay for. So you as a residential customer or another business customer are not subsidizing them. So regulatorily wise, I don't think that's gonna happen, because that's been a huge issue, and we're working with our commission through that. So I don't think you're gonna be subsidizing a data center. Yeah?
To what extent
sorry.
does cryptocurrency contribute to the demand for power?
I think in Minnesota, we've had some inquiries on that, but I'm not aware that has been a big inquiry into the state of Minnesota. So I'm not familiar with, if we have cryptocurrency clients online, I'm not aware of what they might be. I just think we're seeing a bigger demand, more so for artificial intelligence. You in the back?
There's been a lot of controversy from people about rooftop solar and difficulties in negotiating with Xcel Energy. Now, we happen to own a bunch of stock well, it was NSP back then. It's treated us well over the years. So I can understand why Xcel doesn't really want to buy rooftop solar power back at retail value. But I don't hear any discussion about compromises or ways of solving that problem. And is there anything going on to improve that? I have a neighbor who's really dedicated to sustainability, and they had to throw up their hands because they have a beautiful location for rooftop solar, but the bureaucracy just stopped them.
Okay, so your neighbor, they were working with Xcel and they couldn't get very far in terms of, and do you know what the issue was?
They were working with Xcel and I blank on names, but the biggest solar provider in town.
Okay.
I forget their name. Somebody
Okay.
else can find it.
You know, I don't have an answer to that, but maybe after the meeting, I can get your name, and if you could give me a little bit more detail, I can look into that in terms of the rooftop solar program for your neighbor. So if we can talk afterwards, I'd like to get information from you, but I don't know what the answer is to that specific question.
There was a discussion in the paper. Cub tried to get the Utilities Commission to look at this, and they refused. And that's what public utility commissions do, frankly. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. But as a stockholder, believe me, I like to see Xcel be a profitable company.
Sure.
But there's got to be a way to make this work.
Okay. Well, let's talk afterwards, so I can hopefully respond to your question later.
Just on the stockholder side, I'm interested, after NRG was spun off years ago, if there's anything besides the warranty program competitive to Centerpoint that is in the non-regulated side that you could talk about. I know there's some trade secrets.
Yeah, I am not aware, but I am a community relations manager. I'm not into leadership, but I'm not aware of any new non-regulated company that we're looking at being involved in or creating.
Michelle, thank you so much.